Alright, so I am back, and today we have to cover something that is about to happen on Saturday, the NFL playoffs. We have 6 wildcard matchups, 4 divisional round matchups, 2 conference matchups, and of course, 1 Super Bowl matchup. And today, with my bountiful wisdom, I am going to be filling out my ballot as to who is going to win the Super Bowl. So let's just get right into it. And we will begin with our AFC matchups. The first of these matchups is the number 7 Pittsburgh Steelers versus the number 2 Buffalo Bills. And I don't think I have to go too far into this one. I want to save a little bit of time to get a bit more in depth of these other matchups. We all know who's going to win this matchup. The Steelers are going to be starting Mason Rudolph as their starting quarterback, and yeah, they are a very scrappy, hard-nosed defensive team, but without their main leader in TJ Watt, they really stand no chance against Buffalo. Buffalo should be able to do basically whatever they want with Pittsburgh, and while I think Pittsburgh might keep it interesting for most of the game, I do think Buffalo wins by at least 2 scores. So let's go ahead and move Buffalo on to the next round. Next up, we have our Miami Dolphins versus the Kansas City Chiefs. The Miami Dolphins are the 6th seed and the Kansas City Chiefs are the number 3 seed. Now this is a game that is being played at Arrowhead, which as it sits today is currently projected to be at -5 degrees, which in my opinion does not bode well at all for Miami. They are of course from Florida, one of the hotter states in the United States. Not to mention they play in an outdoor stadium in Miami, so they're not really used to those cold temperatures. And kind of a funny stat regarding that is I believe, don't quote me on this, I just read this stat before I came on here, the Miami Dolphins are 0-10 in games with a temperature of less than 40 degrees. So I think for them to win this game, they're going to need a little bit of a miracle. Because while I believe that Tyreek Hill and Tua can get this offense rolling, I just don't see how they're going to stop Patrick Mahomes. Yes, I know Mahomes has gas station workers as his receivers, but at the end of the day, it's Patrick Mahomes. And unless the Miami Dolphins are going to be able to get pressure on him, which I don't see that being the case, they're going to have a very hard time getting Mahomes off schedule and making bad plays. I just don't really see that happening. I think the Kansas City Chiefs win this one pretty handily. Even though I do understand the concerns with the offense of the Chiefs, I do think the defense can do just enough to make this a pretty easy win for them. Will it be a blowout? No, but I would not be surprised if the Dolphins are to lose by more than 10. So let's go ahead and move Kansas City on to the next round. Next up, we have the number 5 Cleveland Browns versus the number 4 Houston Texans. And truth be told, this is going to be a very fun matchup between 2 teams that honestly I did not expect to make the playoffs after a couple weeks into the season. Cleveland, after they lost to Deshaun Watson, I had 0 hope for, and well, Houston, I had 0 hope for coming into the season, but then after I see CJ Stroud play phenomenal, I had a little bit of hope for them. This is going to be a tough matchup though for CJ Stroud and that Houston Texans offense. The Browns are the number 1 team in opponents' yards per game, and with Houston kind of having their struggles offensively at times because they do not have Tank Dell and any sort of dominant run game, I just don't see how they have a path to win this game. The only chance they have is if CJ Stroud and DeMeco Ryans can put together a fantastic game, but against a defense that is as good as Cleveland, I just don't see that happening. And as long as Joe Flacco doesn't throw 3 interceptions or just play absolutely horrible, I think the offense should do fine. I think the first team that reaches over 20 points will probably win the game, and I think Cleveland will be that team. So you know where I'm going. Send the Cleveland Browns on to the next round. We now move on to the NFC side of things. We are going to start off with the Green Bay Packers versus the Dallas Cowboys, which is just such a chef's kiss of a matchup. You have the up-and-coming Green Bay Packers versus the already established and dominant Dallas Cowboys. Dallas has had multiple games against Green Bay in the playoffs where they have struggled to beat them. Not to mention this is a bit of a revenge game for Mike McCarthy. And even though on paper it seems very likely that Dallas will just be able to blow out the Green Bay Packers, I just have a hard time buying that that's going to happen. Everyone thinks Dallas is horrible in the playoffs, which to be honest with you isn't very true. And while I do think Dallas will win, I think this game is either going to be a complete domination from the Dallas Cowboys or a very close back and forth matchup where the offense really takes the head. And I think either way, the advantage is obviously going to head towards Dallas. So you know the drill, send the Cowboys on to the next round. Next up, we get arguably the best matchup of the wild card weekend, which is of course the LA Rams versus the Detroit Lions. The stories already kind of write themselves. This is obviously Jared Goff's former team and of course Matthew Stafford's former team. You also have 2 great head coaches in Dan Campbell and Sean McVay, and you also have 2 unique styles where Sean McVay likes to air the ball out and also establish a run game. Meanwhile, Dan Campbell wants to literally eat your knees. And this is a game that is being played in Detroit, which definitely does help Detroit's chances of winning this game. I just have a hard time imagining this Detroit Lions defense slowing down the offense of the Los Angeles Rams. The Lions defense, which is arguably one of the worst in the entire NFL, is not going to stop Kyren Williams or Puka Nacua or Cooper Kupp or Matthew Stafford or Sean McVay. They're not stopping them. And while the Rams defensively offensively aren't this juggernaut, they are definitely good enough to definitely compete. So unless Jared Goff has the game of his career, I just don't see him beating them. It also bodes very well for the LA Rams because they know the weaknesses of Jared Goff. Hell, they were coaching him and traded him for a reason. So I think all the stars are aligning for the Los Angeles Rams to win this game. At the end of the day, if you're a Detroit Lions fan, you just have to be happy that you won the division and had a chance to win a playoff game. So you know the drill. Send the Rams to the next round. Next up, we get what is going to be a very ugly battle between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You have a very interesting battle of what is a average to below average offense for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and a horrendous Philadelphia Eagles defense. And I think that is the key battle. Can the Tampa Bay Buccaneers put up points against this Eagles defense, or can the Eagles look competent enough to compete in this game? Because I really don't have any doubts that Philadelphia will be able to put up points against this Buccaneers defense. I know this Bucs defense isn't bad, but they're also not like spectacular. Meanwhile, I do think that Philadelphia has enough stars on the offensive side of things to at least put up some good points. I do think right now it's hard to pick based off the health status of AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. If those guys play, I do think Philadelphia wins this game. And I'm not going to use the health factor as a factor as to who I think will win the game, so I'm just going to assume they do play and give the win to the Philadelphia Eagles. I think for Philadelphia, there's a lot on the line in this game. Not only the pride side of things, but the simple fact that you have so much more talent than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You almost have to win this game, or else there's going to be people who get their jobs lost. So with that all said, move the Philadelphia Eagles on to the next round. So that sets us up nicely with 4 amazing matchups in the divisional rounds. We have an AFC North clash between the Cleveland Browns and the Baltimore Ravens. We also have a rematch of what was one of the best games of all time between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills. Then in the NFC, we have an NFC West matchup between the Rams and the San Francisco 49ers. And of course, an NFC East matchup of 2 hated foes, the Philadelphia Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys. Again, we will start off with the AFC with the Browns versus the Ravens. And I think this game is going to come down to a couple things. Who has the most turnovers and who makes the most mistakes? Because both these teams have top 5 defenses to go along with offenses that can put up points. Baltimore can also slow down the pace, whereas I don't feel like the Browns can necessarily do that. And even though Baltimore's offense might technically be better than Cleveland's, Cleveland at least has more superstars with guys like David Njoku and Amari Cooper, whereas Baltimore has some really good players offensively. It all kind of just comes back to whether Lamar Jackson is having a good game. And yes, I know Lamar hasn't played perfectly within the playoffs, but I do have faith that he will be fine in the playoffs. I don't think he's some choke artist who's just going to forget how to play football. So again, I get back to my point here of saying I think the team who makes the most mistakes is going to win the game, because I definitely do think this is going to be a game where it's kind of a chess match. I think when one team scores, the other team will score, and I think it's just a matter of who can break trends. And if you're going to ask me, I would rather take the MVP in Lamar Jackson over Joe Flacco, so I am going to move on with the Baltimore Ravens. So you know the drill. Send the Baltimore Ravens to the next round. Next up, we have Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Buffalo Bills with Josh Allen. And I think this time, Josh Allen has the clear advantage. Yes, I know the Bills defense is riddled with injuries and really not playing fantastic, but they're playing some pretty good football right now, and it seems like they've figured out their identity on the offensive side of things. They also had a favorable matchup in the first round, which I do think will help them get the opportunity to smooth out the problems they have offensively right now. Whereas I don't think Kansas City's had the chance to do that, and if so, I think they would have shown signs of being able to fix those problems. The Chiefs have no receivers. Their offense is completely dependent on the run game and Patrick Mahomes just being a superstar. Whereas I think Buffalo's offensively has so much superstar power, and I think they're playing some really good football right now. Not to mention, this is a game that is being played in Buffalo, which definitely does suit well for the Buffalo Bills. So I think you can see where my vibe is going. The Buffalo Bills will win this game, and I don't think it's going to be all too close. Of course, with Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Andy Reid, it's going to be a closer game than it honestly should be. But I think the Chiefs have far too many problems to outweigh them beating a team like Buffalo right now. Give me the Buffalo Bills in a game that should be fairly close. Let's go ahead and move Buffalo on to the next round. Now moving on to the NFC, we have the NFC West matchup between the Rams and the San Francisco 49ers. And this is going to be a very interesting matchup. Obviously, in the regular season, they did split these matchup, with, of course, the Rams win being against, I believe, Sam Darnold. So with Brock Purdy and this team being fully healthy, I do think this is going to be a super fun matchup. With that being said, though, is there going to be any rust for San Francisco in this game? Probably. And I think for the Rams' sake, they're going to have to take advantage of the San Francisco 49ers rust. Because if the 49ers do start off slow, which I don't think they will, but if they do, then the Rams have to take advantage and put up points early. I think this is going to be a bit more of an offensive game, which in my opinion suits well for the San Francisco 49ers. Because yes, this might be an offensive game, but the San Francisco 49ers have the defense to create turnovers, get sacks, and push you behind the sticks. And while the Rams do have some young guys who are playing very well right now and can also do the same thing, I will take the experience of that San Francisco 49ers team. I think this is going to be a brutal, hard-hitting game in which you're going to see players players get injured, miss some time, and we're going to have to see how that plays out in their next matchups. But ultimately, I do think San Francisco wins in a very close matchup between two hated foes. So give me San Francisco, and San Francisco, you guys are moving on to the NFC Championship game. Next up, we have the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Dallas Cowboys in a game that is going to be played in AT&T Stadium, which I think is really critical for the Dallas Cowboys and their success this playoff run. Dallas is playing good football, and I think whenever they go up against teams with bad defenses, they're more than likely going to win. And you can't talk about bad defenses without mentioning the Philadelphia Eagles. Their defense is a total disaster right now, and we obviously saw that with their last matchup where Dallas just blew them out of the water. And while I don't think Dallas is going to necessarily blow them out of the water, I do think it's going to be a bit of a mix of what we saw in the first game where Philadelphia won and a mix of what we saw with the Dallas game where Dallas blew them out. With that being said, I think Dallas wins this game. As of today, Nick Sirianni and that Philadelphia Eagles team has so many problems. Defensively, they can't stop a bug from peeing, and offensively, they are also a bit of a disaster right now. So I think at halftime, this game could be very close, but I think in the second half, Dallas will pull away. So I think the Dallas Cowboys find a way to win the divisional round, go ahead and move them on to the next spot. Next up, we have our two championship game, which is going to be between the Buffalo Bills and the Baltimore Ravens, and the Dallas Cowboys versus the San Francisco 49ers. I don't think this is anything too shocking. I do think that most people will agree with my picks, but this is where I get a little controversial. We're actually going to split off from the AFC and actually start with the NFC because I like to spark some controversy a little early. Kill me, I think Dallas wins. And this is why. Dallas has the runner-up to the MVP with Dak Prescott. I personally think they have the defensive player and offensive player of the year with CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons. In my opinion, they have the offense and the defense to stack up with a very good San Francisco team. Not to mention, Dallas is coming off of 2 games against bad defenses, so that offense is going to be in a rhythm. Dallas will have all the confidence in the world going into this matchup. Whereas the San Francisco 49ers had a blowout loss to the Baltimore Ravens and a very close matchup against the LA Rams in my hypothetical situation. So while San Francisco is feeling really good about themselves, I think if Dallas smacks them in the face once, it could be a totally different ballgame. So if you're Dallas, you have 2 losses to them in the playoffs and you got blown out by them this year, I think you have to man up, put your pride and ego aside, and win this game. Because this Dallas team today is 10 times different than that Dallas team that San Francisco saw earlier, and if San Francisco goes into this game feeling very cocky and feeling like they have an easy win here, it's going to be a long day for them. Not to mention, nobody's talking about this, but San Francisco has not been playing particularly well in the playoffs these past couple seasons. And yes, I understand that Brock Purdy hasn't really been there for those games, but I'm still sticking true with it. I think Dallas wins, move them on to my Super Bowl. Whereas in the AFC, I don't think it's going to be that controversial. You have Josh Allen versus Lamar Jackson, and I think this is a game that's going to be very similar to these other AFC matchups. I think it's a game where we're going to see 2 teams playing great football, and it's just going to come down to the team who makes the more mistakes. This Ravens offense and this defense is an absolute clinic. They made the San Francisco 49ers offense look horrible. Same thing with the Miami Dolphins. They made them look horrible. I think they're going to make every team in this playoff run look pretty mediocre at times. And I think that follows suit with the Buffalo Bills. Offensively speaking, you have the MVP in Lamar Jackson, who I think is going to play good football moving forward. You have the best defense and the best offensive line to go along with one of the best head coaches. I just think everything kind of is in your favor in this game. Whereas for Buffalo, I don't think it's been a bad season by any means, but you've struggled at times, and I think coming into this game, you've played some good football, but I don't think it's going to be good enough to beat Baltimore. Baltimore has everything going in the right direction, and I think they win this game, so go ahead and move the Baltimore Ravens on to the Super Bowl. Now, our Super Bowl matchup between the Dallas Cowboys and the Baltimore Ravens. This is going to be a tough matchup for Dallas. Let's just get this out of the way. For starters, Dallas is going to have so much confidence going into this game because with the way my bracket fell, they got their revenge against the Green Bay Packers, they destroyed their divisional rivals in the Philadelphia Eagles, and they finally got their get back on the San Francisco 49ers. Whereas for Baltimore, you're also riding high on confidence because you beat some very good teams. They beat their divisional rival in the Cleveland Browns and then went on to beat a very good Buffalo Bills team, which by the way, beat up on the Dallas Cowboys. This is a game where I don't think Dallas is going to be able to slow down that offense of Lamar Jackson in their run game. I think it's going to come down to, can Dak Prescott play well against a very good defense in the Baltimore Ravens? And while I don't think Dak is going to be the reason why they lose this game, I just wonder if he can do enough to win the game for them. Yes, I think Dak is playing like an MVP, but you want to know who else is playing like the MVP? Lamar Jackson. And while Dallas might have more stars than them, I don't think they have the stars to beat a team like Baltimore. This is going to be a game where Dallas's stars are going to have to play like top 5 players in the NFL, and I just don't know if they can do that in this moment. What I will say does bode well for Dallas is that this game is going to be played in Las Vegas, which the Las Vegas fans typically will go for the Dallas Cowboys. Meanwhile, Maryland fans are going to have to travel pretty far to get to that Las Vegas stadium, so I will imagine that there's going to be more Cowboys fans in that stadium than Ravens fans. Ultimately, I don't know if it matters that much. I think the Baltimore Ravens will beat the Dallas Cowboys, so you know what that means. We give the Lombardi Trophy to Lamar Jackson. And the Baltimore Ravens are my NFL Super Bowl winners. But when it's all said and done, my list is only my list. Let me know in the comment section below your list. But anyways, thank you guys for watching, and I love you guys. Peace.